might have emailed the,
PDFs, they
Yeah.
were pretty long, so I just started skimming them. Is that the same thing, or? is it-
Yeah, it's a hard copy.
Okay, I prefer electronic.
That's my favorite answer.
Yeah, I got enough hard copies floating around the house for various things here.
these come in handy at budget time, just because it's been so long.
You want to give the 30-second elevator speech?
Sure. I'm an electrician by trade. I've been in the industry for a little over 30 years. Worked for various 4 or 5 contractors over the years. Taught part-time at Milwaukee Technical College from 97 to 2009, to my 2009-2010 school year. Started full-time with them, but I still maintain my position at Peeper Electric. So in the summer, I would still work for them. And then a tenure between 2010 and 2014, I was a commercial electrical inspector for Glendale, West Milwaukee, Deanville. I had part-time and so Menominee Falls. So I did that for 4 years to 2014. My teaching just got so busy, I couldn't do inspecting full-time and teaching full-time. It was too much. So.
Is Chuck Stock still at MATC?
He retired, he left MATC, I should say,
Okay.
in 2016, 2017. He went to WCTC,
Okay.
and I don't know if he's still at WCTC.
All set? All right, you ready?
Ready?
We're live.
Call this planning commission meeting to order. Start out with a roll call. Commissioner Mecca.
Here.
Trustee Honeyshill.
Present.
Trustee Renner.
Here.
Planner Sensky.
Here.
President Lysick here. Clerk Ford. Commissioner Bennett is absent. Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Commissioner Zabruski. Here. And Engineer Rauch.
Here.
Very good. Item 2, we'll go into public comments. There is nobody here, so I guess we'll skip over to public comments.
Unless somebody wants to change their seat.
True. Okay. Item 3, consideration and approval of minutes from the October 28th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting.
Make a motion to dispense with reading.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
So there is an updated set of minutes.
They're in there. That's not it?
Yes.
Yes, I just wanted to point out to the commissioners that I don't know if they got that emailed or if it's just on their desks tonight.
Oh, it's just on your desk.
Yeah. So there were some red line changes that I had proposed that Alina went ahead and printed up this afternoon, and then incorporated without showing the red lines on the copy you have in front of you. And so I kind of clarified a few of the conditions under the Lake Park storage. Do you want me to go through those changes, or are you happy just reading through them and deciding you're good or not good with that? Basically what these minutes are going to do is Jamie came into us last month and asked for some exceptions or modifications to the terms of his development agreement and deed restriction. And the commission went through point by point and talked about those exceptions with him. Some of them, a little relief or waiver was given. Some of them, it was not. And so these minutes have to stand as the record
On how that ended up.
of what will be handled differently from the recorded development agreement and deed restriction. So I just want to be sure that we get these right, all these points. Laura did an awesome job, putting the minutes together, and I just embellished a couple of spots.
Sure. Good.
Good evening.
Good evening. Because we can't see the red changes or whatever, is there something specific or significant that you want to just maybe point out as we go through and read through?
Sure.
I think it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to just review.
I'll just go through them.
Sure.
Sorry, it's taking me just a minute to get my red line to copy.
I got it up if you want to start.
Sure, go for it.
First change was on page 1, starting, I apologize, it is on page 2. Right after the laundry list of items where it starts, the consensus was, she added to require full compliance with the EADR as written, except, and then as follows for each item was there. I'm not gonna list all the numbering changes or lettering changes. Item 5B, she added DADR, developer agreement, deed restriction, that stands for, and then lowercase occupancy on the O there. 5C, the word plans replaced with the word hopes to convert to emergency use only, and then she added per the DADR by. And after 2022, all of the following was added. After all the concrete has been poured in phase 2, this entrance, while it remains open for construction vehicles, will not be used as a routine entry/exit point for owners/visitors and to and from the condo units. Item 5D, after where it says November 8th, was added, and DNR paperwork copies provided to the village to confirm. Item 5E, after location, we struck will be deferred and substituted in must have new location and enclosure approved by planning commission before the phase 2 occupancy. 5F starts with completion of gating and fencing will be deferred until was replaced the word to phase 2, and then we added earthworks, site prep work, and concrete or earlier. Then we added in after earlier, if complaints or safety issues arise from too much use of this drive, the village can require it to be gated fenced sooner. We go down to 5H. We just added in DADR after the word to.
Has to be done to DADR
Right.
spec.
Skip all the way forward to item 11. We added installation to be per DADR. Eliminated the word be and went but can have, and then crossed out delayed until June 1st, 2022. It was spring. We put a firm date on that. Item 12 was added entirely. Item 12 wasn't there, and now you can read it. Whoop. Item 24.
That should be 14, shouldn't it?
No,
Why does it jump from 13 to 24? Unless that's just a
The other
notes, the other things don't have anything to, these are the items that were called out?
Right.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I see it, I see it.
24 reads, as is now, we struck out, keys will be provided to village officials, police department, fire department, including access to temporary chain. That's all spelled out already in the developer's agreement, deed restriction, so shorten the verbiage up. Item 25, same thing. We struck out exterior lighting on building 1 ready for power. No exterior lighting poles installed at this time, just to comply as written. And those are the only changes. And the other ones would all be correcting numbers or letters, sequencing. Any questions on that portion? I have a question on the minutes here for item 8, engineer's report. It reads, up through developer and Payne and Dolan have proposed milling off 1 inch from the existing roadway. I don't recall them, that being in the quote. They were gonna mill up to 1 inch to blend into the driveways. But it wasn't gonna be 1 inch off the entire roadway.
I thought the quote was to mill off 1.5 inches and drop down 2.
No, the quote was.
There's so many things thrown around. up there.
Yeah, right, well, and I'm gonna have Mike compile that all in an
Summary,
email.
Yeah,
With all 4 options.
that's right.
And I wanna ask him to do it because he knows
We do.
the exact numbers.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they weren't gonna mill off
No, I don't.
on this
think that's
one,
right.
because they were gonna do the high quality fine grain asphalt, 1.5 inches thick, and they were just gonna add that right over the top with a tack layer.
Yeah, cause
And
that
they
was
were-
his preferred.
Right, and they were only gonna mill a little bit at the driveways to
Yeah.
blend it in.
Right, the other one was just, yeah, it wasn't,
So I don't know how we,
Maybe
Correct.
amend the minutes based on review of that email letter quote, right? Just leave that open to say, go double check that quote for the detail. That makes sense?
was it recorded?
the quote,
No, the meeting?
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
I think
so
so.
we can go back and listen.
Yeah, but, I
If we
mean, the quote was
misquoted it.
emailed from Payne and Dolan.
Right.
Right, so I'll just go back there.
Yeah, what the.
Because really what you're calling out is that.
Yeah,
You know,
that's right.
not
right.
necessarily
I
all
mean,
the
that's
other
a good point.
discussion.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended with that to be a follow-up item for her.
I'll second that.
motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Let's look and see if I have that quote.
It's an email.
Yeah, just didn't know if I had it.
Oh, here it is.
Moving along, we already did public comments. Item 5, new business. A, review, discussion, and possible action on the site plan of operations approval request of applicant Caleb Burdick, doing business as Exclusive Wholesale LLC, to locate his wholesale household goods business operations in one of the tenant spaces of this multi-tenant commercial building. The property located at West 229 South 8670 Big Bend Drive is owned by Edgewood Plaza Property LLC in care of Doug Runge and is zoned B2 Local Service Center District.
Caleb reached out about 2 weeks ago, sent us this form that he had hoped we could sign off on at staff level. It's a the Tomorrow Main Street Bounce Back Grant. And I assume that that is some federal funding that's available for people who occupy previously vacant tenant spaces in these commercial buildings. And I would be happy to sign off on that, or have somebody at the village sign off on that, but I told him that in advance of moving into a tenant space over in the Edgewood Plaza, where he wants to be, and I believe it's 1,500 square feet in the old Condos space in the building. I told him that he needed to get a site plan of operation approval from the village, like every business does when they move into an existing building or site. And so he made his application. It's fairly vague, and it's based principally on my telephone conversation with him, because he wasn't really prepared himself to put any plans or details together. So what I know of his proposed operation, again, is 1,500 square feet in a site that's zoned B2. And what he had said he intends to do is specifically no storefront, but that he purchases bulk home goods. That's all I know. He purchases bulk home goods and would be warehousing them until he can sell them downstream. Either, I don't know if he sells them to other retailers or who he sells them to, whether he puts them on Craigslist or eBay or what have you, but in any case, he did say there's no storefront. So the issue that raises for me is just with respect to the shopping center in the B2 district. It's a wholesaling operation by his own description specifically. And you really need to be in the B3 district for that to be a permitted use. So the question comes up for the commission, do you want to interpret it differently? And unfortunately, I don't see that it came tonight. Do you want to interpret that any differently? Or do you want to consider making amendments to the code to facilitate this request? I guess that's at your discretion. But the conditions that I had suggested, the concerns I had with the wholesaling use were with respect to two things. One is that can be very garbage intensive. There can be a lot of recycling and packaging and things like that that can go with that, although 1,500 square feet isn't that much space. But we want to make sure that he's got adequate, trash receptacles, dumpster access, that kind of thing. But then also, he did say that it can come on semi-trucks, and that center is tight. I really would want a little more developed information about how deliveries would arrive to the site and how shipping out of the site or transporting out of the site goes as well. And he hasn't provided any of that for me. So the proposed hours of operation that he gave us were Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. He did not say that there would be any signage required as a part of the use. My recommended conditions, if you're leaning toward an approval, and I guess whether that's really an option for you tonight is debatable in my mind, unless you guys feel you interpret the B2 somehow differently. But the conditions, I would include that before occupancy, the village board would either have to add wholesaling to the list of uses permitted in the B2 district, or the property would have to be rezoned to B3. Secondly, that they would have to provide for the commission review and possible approval of the site plan detail, including the truck types, such as what types would come for shipping and receiving, the expected frequency of those kind of trucks, the hours those trucks would be on site, and the plan for where they will queue while they're being loaded and unloaded. Number 3, that there would be no outside storage of materials, equipment, or supplies as a part of the use. Number 4, that the applicant would have to confirm that no additional dumpsters or other trash receptacles will be needed on site. There is one there now. There's an enclosure in the back. Whether that's sufficient to satisfy his need in addition to the other tenants is unclear. Any signs that he would decide to put up in the future would have to comply with the sign section of the village code. Number 6, that the planning commission would advise at what point and by whom the village would sign off on that acknowledgement letter to the Main Street Bounce Back Grant. And number 7, that there would be no new or modified building, site or building lighting or landscaping proposed or approved as a part of this request. Turn it over to the commission.
think there's too many questions and not enough answers.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
does.
as far as the clarity on the type of business and what is
No, it's-
expect. Because the other thing, I mean, obviously I know that corner really well, I'm like, the parking. If this is gonna be a place where he's gonna have people coming to pick up things, that parking is already a tight parking lot because of the other businesses that are there.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the fact that he's calling it a wholesaling LLC,
Yeah.
and it's not a permitted business in that
Mhm.
B2
Yeah, that's a
is
whole
the
different
problem there.
piece, yeah.
Yeah, the drop off and pickup of goods.
But he-
If he's
yeah.
wholesaling, he's using trucks, I'm guessing.
Well, and so does, I mean, so does Crossroads, I'm sure, but again, they're using food delivery trucks, not semis. You know, they're a little bit different, those aren't as large traditionally.
Yeah, well,
Depends
they're-
who it is, depends on who the vendor is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if they're getting their,
But it
you
sounds
know,
like this
Cisco
would be-
or US Foods
Yeah,
delivery.
depends on who it is.
it
But
sounds
they
like
plan
this
the
would be
hours
delivery
different.
trucks in and delivery trucks back out with no forward-facing business to the public. It's almost like a storage.
It is
Right.
no forward-facing business to the public. That part was crystal clear.
Okay.
That's good.
In my conversations with him. And I view that as a disadvantage to the other tenant occupants who've been approved in that center.
Right. I kind of agree, I think that's a retail center, and you would tend to want to keep a retail business in there, just to keep the pedestrian traffic going for the sake of the other businesses.
In the home goods, what type of equipment is he gonna be loading and unloading the trucks with? If there's nothing, if there's a forklift involved, then you have the issue of where's the forklift parked, where's the unloading and loading action going?
I really do not know the answer to that.
Yeah, I can't see changing the zoning for one small business.
That's-
I'd at least want to find out a lot more information about it.
Yeah, we
before
need more about
decide
the business in
to even
general.
look at that. This tomorrow Main Street bounce back grant, that's something we have to sign off on for him?
Yeah.
The municipality has to sign off on it, so he can submit it and get the grant.
Have we ever,
I'm not aware that we've signed off on one yet, have we?
I haven't seen one in Big Bend yet. I
Yeah,
have
no.
seen one in another
Yeah, I was gonna
community.
say, I've heard about it, but I haven't seen it, I didn't know of anybody here using it yet.
does the store, does the space have to be vacant for a certain amount of time before this would qualify?
Not clear, but it doesn't really, a previously vacant commercial space, and I think we can confirm that it's vacant.
Yeah.
Um, I wouldn't want to sign off on it. I would expect that the commission would approve it and the clerk would sign off.
You want your name on that?
Yeah. Or the village president.
There you go, now we're talking.
Why not?
Tom.
Why not?
Mr. Verdict, say anything about his timing on this, or when he was wanting to
Got
start
the
going?
impression that we were holding him up by having to go through this process.
Have to hold on a little bit longer to get more details.
So it sounds like you might want to just decide to postpone this, maybe put it off to the December meeting.
Which we won't have, right? Isn't it, are we gonna do
Yeah.
December? Oh, that's
16.
right, we did decide on that, that's right.
And if he doesn't come that night either, then I think you just take an action.
Was he invited?
I think that's.
Yep. I mean,
I
I didn't invite him, but I
Told him.
explained the process and the dates and everything to him, yes.
I did look to see if he was copied in on the agenda emails.
Yeah, it's pretty open, it just says, to new or existing businesses, moving into a vacant property. Funds can be used to pay $10,000.
All right.
We have to make a motion to table? Make a motion to table 5A.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Make sure communication goes out to him, implying that he shows up at the next meeting and answers the questions.
You want me to handle that, or you wanna handle it, or?
Communicating with them?
Yeah.
I'm.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion tabled. Agenda item tabled. 5B, review, discussion, and possible action on the plan of operations approval request of applicant Aaron Rodriguez to occupy the middle tenant space, for example, 3,000 square feet in the existing multi-tenant light industrial building located at West 224 South 8470 Industrial Avenue with his personal auto enthusiast, hobbyist, tinkerer use. The property, which is zoned I-1 Light Industrial District, is owned by Minor Investments LLC, in care of Dan Minor.
So this one just came up last Friday, Thursday. Dan Minor called me on Thursday and said, you know, I've got a guy who wants to rent 3,000 square feet in my building. He'd be the middle tenant in that space if you look at the map. And all he wants to do is automotive, tinkering, repair, hobbyist type use in there. Not as a storefront, not as a service for pay. I asked were there going to be any signs, and Dan said he wasn't sure whether they planned on putting up any signs. So here again, we run up against the code as far as uses permitted in the I-1 district. So the B3 district lists automobile service such as engine service and repair, and it lists tire sales and service, not including auto body service, as permitted uses. That's the B3. This property is zoned I-1, and the only one of those that the I-1 lists is auto body repair as a conditional use. Okay? So, you know, this is one of those gray areas where I haven't really been asked this question before. I'm just a hobbyist, and if I'm not running a business, can I just use that space as my hobby shop? I see it as a real slippery slope to how do we track that it's only his vehicles and it's not customers that are coming in, etc. Or do we just base it on the use alone and say, gosh, you know, your auto body work, you can get a conditional use permit for it, but these other things aren't in the district, so you can't do it. I put together a lengthy list of conditions if you were leaning toward, you know, wanting to handle this thing. It would include, number one, village board having to add auto service, such as engine service and repair. And then possibly, I don't know if he intends to do tires at all, but they would also then have to add tire sales and service to the I-1 zoning district. So, you know, that's a big step, having to go through the code amendment process to get to this end game. Furthermore, if auto body is intended as part of the use, then he would have to get a conditional use in the matter. Condition 2, Planning Commission would have to review and possibly approve specific details as to the scope of uses to be conducted in the tenant space, such as, and then I list all those things, auto engine repair, tire repair, auto body, and then possibly auto sales. I don't know. I didn't get to talk to the applicant. He may not be English speaking, and so Dan was doing his best to try and articulate to me what this guy wants to do, or these guys want to do. Applicant to provide Planning Commission review and approval, the dumpster location and screening plan. He simply says in here that it would be placed behind the trees, but that's not a real good solution if you look at the area of view on that site. Then also the condition that the applicant would provide for the Planning Commission to review and approve the specific site plan detail as to the number and location of stalls that would be allocated, parking stalls on the site that would be allocated to him. Number 5, that there would be no unlicensed, inoperable, or unregistered vehicles permitted to be parked outdoors at the site. Number 7, that the applicant or the property owner would devise a plan for village staff to review that would develop gating at the site. So if you look at the open paved area from the south of the building to the south lot line, you can see that it's a wide open clear path to the back of the site where I'm not sure what the approved use is or whether this is just a legal non-conforming use that's held over, but there's a ton of boat storage out there that I don't know whose operation that is. But that's the kind of thing, outdoor storage, that we typically require be screened. So now would be the time to take that incremental step to try and get this site in closer compliance with the current code, okay? Condition 8, the building tenant space cannot be occupied for personal dwelling or residence purposes. We've had that come up a couple times now in the business park, and so I think it's wise to start putting that in as a condition of approval, so everybody's on notice up front. Number 9, that any signs that they would want to put up in the future would have to comply with the code and get applicable permits. Number 10, they could not modify the building or site, except as approved by any plans that the planning commission looks at and approves. So here's another one that's perfectly in the gray area, and very little time was left since it was all developing on Friday.
There's no dividers in that building, that's just an open building?
No, I think there
Or
are 3
is
tenant
that-
spaces.
there is? I
Yeah,
couldn't
it's got
remember.
an ABC.
There's block walls in between.
Okay, that part I couldn't remember if that building had that or not.
What's in the other spaces?
So, Dan Miner's got one, and then that Wintech.
Wintech is not in there anymore.
Okay, well, it's called out on.
No, wait, I'm sorry, Wintech is in there. Wintech is way on the end. He does the engine repair work and outboard motors and so forth and everything else and boats.
So that's.
And that's where the storage comes in.
Yeah, it's storing them, that's,
Yeah.
that's a use unto itself,
Right.
so.
He never used to have that much in years past, but now lately it's been picked up quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because people don't have room in their own homes or their own areas, so they ask them if they could store it there.
What is Dan doing with that first unit, do you know?
The first unit, he's got his own stuff in there.
Just storage? What kind of operation is it?
Makes operate, custom structural is totally gone. You know that, right?
Across the street, we approved
Mhm.
pole hammer
Yep.
to
Pole hammer's in there
move
right now,
into
yeah.
Miner's old buildings there. So he's kind of phasing out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he, met at the auction and everything else, and, custom structural was totally, completely out. And, Paul Hammer and his son has got all the buildings, and they're gonna take the shop where it used to be, the body shop is gonna go where custom structural was, the far building is gonna be where they're gonna have, the powder coating. And the other 2 buildings from that are gonna be rented out eventually.
So Miner's part of this building though, he just does storage in there now, or?
But do we know what across the street?
No, the one we're talking about tonight.
That's the one
Yeah, the one
across.
across the street.
It's the one across the street. Yes, he's in there also. He has some of his stuff in there, some of his stuff stored in there.
So, because I'm not familiar, that building, is it listed as just one building, one occupant, or do we have business plans for 3 separated units in that building?
I haven't been a part in 12 years of review and approval of any occupants in that building.
The back end was Wintec for many, many years.
Okay.
Now, can
Pre-existing.
you come forward towards Industrial Avenue, there were 2 more open stalls in there. Gary Kovacic wasn't one of them. Gary Kovacic left, then Danny just took over the building. And then it took care of the maintenance of that building because it was pretty much getting run down. So then Danny had all his stuff in there, and plus some other storage of some stuff he had in there, and that was it. Now he wants to keep one end of it for himself and the other part for this new gentleman that wants to come in.
Got it.
And Wintec will stay where he's at.
So if these
And
are
then you
forward-
can improve the fencing.
So if these are forward-facing businesses, or it sounds like some may be storage, but do we have a business plan? Are we capturing any type of taxable income from these businesses? Are we even acknowledged on a level that they exist?
Sure, we have a lot of businesses that are in the village that I've never seen or touched, and I don't know if they ever were specifically approved.
So hypothetically, it could be that these are businesses that are doing business to the public, but we're not.
It doesn't mean you don't
We-
tax them that way, I mean,
Yeah.
the appraiser, the assessor.
Assessor, yes.
Handles that
Yes.
piece of it.
He handles
gets
that, it's been
boots
taken
on
out
the
of
ground
there.
every so often.
Right.
And they know it's a commercial enterprise and they
So they would go knock
assess
on the 3
accordingly.
separate doors in a for a business like this to see who's in there and who's doing what?
Every time that there's a reevaluation done, they do actually go out
Right.
and physically observe the properties.
So in a sense, this building being subdivided into 3 separate places that could occupy business or storage or whatever, should almost be like a business condominium.
Correct.
Or tenant spaces for lease.
So my question is, as we're looking at this, why would we treat this any different than we would, say, the Lake Park business condominiums where, you know, if somebody's doing auto body repair and then also, sorry, let me think about this for a second, engine service repair, tire repair, auto body service work, but they're doing it for their own cars,
Right.
then how are we stepping through that for, I know that it's B3 instead of a I1, but I mean, are we regulating it that way and telling tenants that they can only do engine service repair, tire service, but not auto body service in the Lake Park condominiums?
Yeah, they can't do auto body service in the Lake Park condos.
No, they can't.
But this applicant's saying hobbyist, so he's not doing any service.
But that's what I'm
He's-
saying, it's
he's
obvious,
doing-
there's no forward
This is
facing
a-
businesses
See,
at Lake
that-
Park condominiums. I'm just trying to make
Right.
like with like
That's
here,
the thing, if
examples and
you're
apples.
buying it for personal use,
There's no
well,
service.
we're not regulating a business, there's no
Right.
service being performed. You wanna work on your body, on your
In your
truck,
shed.
right,
Yeah.
you can do that.
That's where I'm kind of leading with this. Is this even something that we need to consider if he is coming forth and just saying that he's just a tinker or hobbyist, only working on his own things?
Yeah, so we are gonna see those exact same requests come out of the storage condo. And we do have the review of those personal hobbyist type uses. And I expect auto will be a lot of them. And they will have those conditions attached to them that, you know, this isn't a storefront business, it's for personal use only. That they can't park and store any vehicles outdoors, they can't have any unlicensed inoperables outdoors at the property. So, you know, the space effectively controls itself, just by the spatial limitations.
Also, when the fire inspector does an inspection, he also sees that anything other and above taking place, can mark it down and then bring it to your attention.
Yeah, and building inspections would end up weighing in as well.
Weighing in
If you're
as
gonna have the
well.
public coming to your space, then you have certain commercial building standards that you're gonna have to comply with.
I would say there's a concern with the building inspections too, is if you're doing auto body and repair and storage of vehicles, you have flammable storages, you have spray booth requirements. That's a
Okay.
big compliance issue because you've got tenants on each side of you that their business or space is gonna be affected by the fact that if you have a fire with that type of equipment, flammables in there.
Yeah. And you know, that condition's not written here, but I always had that condition attached to all of the site plan of operation approvals, and that was that the public safety personnel and the building inspector would do a full walkthrough of the site and buildings completely, not just this space, but anything that's on that property. And any conditions of approval that they determine are necessary from their perspectives, the public safety, the building inspections, any of that, the applicant has to comply with all of those conditions, period, before occupancy.
I think so the recommendations are written out pretty well. But wouldn't that, I guess, unless I'm confused, like Tony is, wouldn't the recommendations be based on someone running a business out of there? If they're doing automotive service and body work and engine repair and tires and sales and service for that? Because he's just saying, I'm not doing work for, quote unquote, I'm not gonna do work for other people.
Right.
I'm just gonna tinker on my own stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So-
then that kind of remains to be seen, and then if push comes to shove in the future, and then there's like a new car rolling in and out of there every week, and Am I,
I know people who have 30, 40 cars, they collect old. They go down south and buy an old junker for $1,200 and bring it home, and
sure,
it might take them 5 years to start working on it, you know?
Sure.
And they're constantly buying and selling these cars to get parts, you know, it's their hobby.
yeah,
You know, as
Yeah.
long as you're not selling retail out of there or performing a service for someone else.
that's what I'm just trying to confirm, I'm just kind of wondering, so if he's just gonna be working on his own stuff as a hobbyist, tinkerer, then the recommendation stuff, having the proper fencing and the hours of operation, and that wouldn't be applicable, because it's not a business.
No, you still wanna put those on
You
there.
want to
You
put
do.
those
Yeah.
on there.
Okay,
And part of us,
So any occupancy in a business or industrial district
okay,
requires your approval of the site plan of operation.
sure,
It's called updating and improving your industrial park.
well, and that's the other key here, this opens that door for us to look at what might not be conforming over there. Maybe it was legal non-conforming before, but now that we have a new occupancy potential, it gives us the ability to say, hey, we have some things that you haven't been following, and at that time, maybe they didn't apply, or they weren't on the books, but now they do. So this opens that door for us to then enforce those things.
sure.
It's just like Horn Brothers. I don't know, have people been in industrial park lately? The old Horn Brothers compared to the new Horn Brothers today? It looks like somebody really did a heck of a job on that building. It's beautiful now, got trees around it, lights on it, so forth and everything else. Quite an improvement. And that's what this falls under right now, what we're talking about.
Did Mr. Minor see your recommendations or respond to them? Did he have any, like, when we talk about adding fencing and all these other things, was he open to that, or do we know that?
I don't know if you sent the packets
I
out.
didn't do
to the
anything, I
applicants?
was out of town.
Oh,
Laura did it all.
okay, okay. Normally, they would have been sent out,
Okay,
so
is this another situation where we don't have enough information yet to make a decision until we would hear back from Dan
Well, I mean,
Minor?
ultimately, we could still make a recommendation or, approval with the recommendations. If he chooses not to want
Right.
to follow, then there's the answer.
Sure.
I think the bigger question that we may have to address tonight is that whole zoning,
The zoning,
right?
yeah.
What is classified in the industrial, light industrial versus B3, and whether or not we feel comfortable changing the language or going forward on trying
You
to.
need to change the language for a hobbyist.
I think we're back to that gray area again.
You're in an industrial zone and you're looking for a guy who's just looking for a storage locker,
Yeah,
you know, to putz on his cars with, or airplanes, or whatever he's doing, I don't know. I see his addresses on, you know, in Waukesha,
Right.
and there's not a whole lot of room to work where he's, if that's his home
Yeah,
residence.
postage stamp.
But can this hobbyist or tinkering be treated just like the home goods in the last one, where it's just too vague? And we don't have an understanding of what's actually going on there.
Well, his rub there is that was a wholesale.
Yeah, wholesale.
In the rub, his
Well,
whole
right,
business
but I'm just saying,
wholesale.
it was very vague on what he's doing there, just like hobbies and tinkering. I mean, what does that mean?
At least,
It's very vague.
at least the wholesale, it was an LLC attached to it's an actual business. He's
Right.
supposedly doing this for profit and not just for the 10 grand of the.
Right, well, like I said, hobbies and tinkering could mean a lot of things, and you can do a lot of things under the table there that you're not aware of.
True, but you could do that out of your own garage too.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's why, I lean towards, yeah, like you said, this is just like, he's buying some storage space, and whatever he's doing in there, he's doing in there, because it's not a business entity that's running it.
Well, it does have zoning though, and the
Sure.
zoning does only allow certain uses. So, if you're a hobbyist who runs a foundry, and you're just doing it for your own personal use,
Good point, good point.
There's people
He's gonna put a rock forge in there.
have in their garages and basements, by the way.
they do.
Oh, absolutely. Come tag along with me in my career for a while. We've got to go clean that stuff up. I didn't know that I was forging lead.
Here, Mary is thinking she's going out on a limb.
Right.
And you're gonna throw it.
I don't know,
That's not far-fetched.
Absolutely true.
Could you add to the recommendation that, upon review of the space by the building
Yep.
inspector,
Yeah, we
fire,
definitely need that.
code officials,
Yeah.
to make sure that the space is adequate to do that type of work? I mean, there's a lot in the electrical code and the building code regarding doing that type of work and the stringent requirements on flammables and hazardous locations versus non-hazardous locations. Even though it's a hobbyist space, because it's a commercial building, those codes don't go away. They still are
Mhm.
attached to that space.
And for now, he can only do engine repair and service and tires for his own personal purposes. Can't have a storefront of tires because he hasn't asked for that, for other people's vehicles. So he can change his own tires, he can do his own.
That's where the
engine.
confusion comes in, though, because if he's hobbyist, how does that limit him from doing that?
Well, it's
No, I'm saying
currently
he
zoned
can
as
do that.
industrial, right?
Right.
Obviously,
So
or
you
not,
would
he still
have
has to
to-
obey by the zone.
I don't understand.
If it was
why.
a service though, but he's not pulling a service, if he's a hobbyist, it seems like that's where the confusion is, if he's a hobbyist, he's not limited to those,
He's a hobbyist
'Cause he's not
doing
doing-
engine repair and engine service.
then that's a business.
And that is business.
That's where I think the definitions are getting confusing, because if you're saying that he's doing engine repair and
It's
engine
only-
service,
it's only
that's a
business
service,
if
then
you're
he's,
selling a good.
then he's, well, he's
Or
doing
service.
service, that's a
If he's
business.
doing it for his own personal use,
Mm-hmm.
it's no longer a business, it is a building. It may as well be vacant, because you're not generating any revenue out of it. You're selling a storage locker.
Yeah.
Right.
The service that he's doing is basically just to.
According to what he's requesting,
Yeah, I mean-
what he actually does.
I think calling it a service is where it gets confusing, I think if he's just doing hobbyist
On his own
work
stuff.
on his own personal,
My bigger
I
question.
think service is where it comes like a definition that's being,
Yeah.
you're
It's
providing
a fine
something.
business, yeah.
My bigger question on the whole thing is, why do we allow engine repair and tires in I-1, but not auto body?
Yeah,
They kind of all go together.
Yeah, they do.
And I mean, if you're gonna allow it anywhere, why wouldn't you allow it in the industrial
no, we do allow it in the industrial, it's
As a
conditional
conditional
use.
use.
as a condition?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you're saying that industrial does not allow engine repair and the tires?
Yes,
Correct.
exactly.
That's in the B3.
It doesn't make
Current.
sense.
Current.
I mean, I don't,
It's a conundrum.
So, yeah, so at this point, all he could do is auto body. He couldn't do anything with tires, he couldn't do anything with,
Now without a modification
no,
to
without
the
modification.
zone.
And that would stand true even if he was a hobbyist?
That's where we're getting
Would
rounded
not-
out.
Right.
Maybe- Yeah, and that was my original
Yeah.
first question.
They say you do it in your garage at home, I mean, if you're working on your own stuff, so you're not providing a service, and it seems like he's asking for. He
Yeah.
wants a 3,000 square foot
garage.
garage.
Right.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that, engine repair and service is not allowed in a residential district,
It's
but
generally
it
a
happens
commercial use.
every day.
I think, well, for,
That's why it's in the B
For a
district and not the I district.
So, can
everyone can do it at home, you're not
you,
gonna stop someone from doing it at home, I mean, that's.
can you use a property in the I-1 district as personal use, personal garage,
Yeah.
personal storage?
I think you can.
Well, then that answers the question.
And yeah,
Otherwise, we'd have to kick half the people out of the industrial park.
But the use you put that personal space to is regulated by the code. And just because it says engine repair and service, I think what that means, I interpret that to mean, last night I went out into the garage and I serviced my engine. I worked on my engine. I think it's service as a verb, not,
paid.
I changed, actually, I changed Larry's water pump for him and he paid me $100 or whatever. That's
No.
not
I would
what
think
it
it's
is.
Well, that would be a problem
Yeah,
Right.
with this
that's your-
case.
The idea of
If he went out there and
servicing the
fixed his
vehicle
own water
is
pump,
performing the
that's
maintenance
fine.
service, manufacturer maintenance service that.
yeah, he's servicing his car.
So.
And I think that's where the definition of hobbyist and tinkering needs to be clarified from his end, of his extent of what he's planning on doing there. If he's not allowed to do, if you consider, changing oil as an engine service, then
Yeah,
you know, that's where the clarification needs to be from the applicant, I would think,
Yeah.
what his intentions are. And then we can
Hobbyist
be, then,
tinkerer are the words that I offered to Dan Minor, because Dan Minor said they don't wanna, they just wanna go in there and do their own
Work on their cars.
car work. Yeah,
and there's, then
and I said, well, what does that mean?
they can't, is what we're being told.
It's called self-maintenance on your own vehicle.
I think-
But per the, you know, interpretation of it, they can't.
Because this
They can
is,
park their car in there, and
See,
that's it.
if he's a car guy and he's using the word hobbyist, that has a very specific meaning.
But he's not, that was her words to Dan.
Oh,
But Dan said, yes, that's what they are.
it's in his handwriting on the application.
Agreed, but I'm sure you filled that out after discussion. with
Okay.
Aaron.
He did.
Yeah,
Yep.
so, I'm not saying he was leading the witness, but you know what I mean?
No, I understand what you're saying,
Without-
right.
Without Aaron here to properly explain exactly what he's intending for that 3,000 square feet, we have to take some assumptions. And obviously Dan was too.
Yeah, and I don't think we can move anything forward without having Aaron here to explain
Yeah.
his intentions. I mean, if he's just looking for a 3,000 square foot, relatively inexpensive storage area, you know, to work on his personal vehicles,
But then you can't.
yeah, you can.
According to interpretation, she just said that if he does anything on his vehicle as far as the engine,
Other than all
That-
that,
that would
That,
be.
that can't be
that'd
interpreted
be
that way
interpreted as
because then
service.
every single homeowner in this village.
Well, that's why I'm getting confused by it, that, you know.
Right.
If he's not making profit, then it's not a service.
Yes,
If he's making profit, it's a service.
correct.
So, if he's working on his own stuff, changing his oil, doing whatever he wants on his cars, it's not a service.
I think
That would be my definition of a service. If he makes a profit, that's a service. He's offering something.
Let me ask you this, if it's zoned I-1, in the permitted uses for I-1, is there any verbiage in there for a hobbyist or something like
I
that?
like doubt it.
Yep.
there's not for B2 or B3 either.
Yeah,
So we're going to run into the same exact issue
Correct.
whenever we get the first applicant for Lake Park condominiums and they state, I'm a hobbyist and I'm going to work on my cars, doing auto body, tire changing, and engine work.
Mhm.
And we addressed this a little bit up front with Lake Park condominiums, but I don't think we've defined it down to where we're looking at it right now.
I'm actually really glad we're
there's a
facing
big,
this. It was like sent to us
there's a big difference
just in time to
between
be ahead of.
repair and body work. Body work's a whole other animal. You know what I mean?
Not so much the
Because there's so
body,
many variables with that. There's the metal work, there's the sanding and the filtration, and then there's also, are you gonna do a paint? I mean, like, I can't see somebody at the Lake Park thing painting their car in there.
no, they're not.
Could.
No,
I mean,
No.
I think that somebody would at least want to. I don't know if
you
I
don't
would
have much
want
square
to.
footage there.
Yeah, I don't know.
No way. Unless you're not real shy painted for you.
That's
That's
the
the
problem.
process of backyard guys do though.
there's
Yeah,
a,
you're
there's a,
right.
Cash job.
They even sell those inflatable spray booths you can rent.
Right.
So I mean, they could set that up in one of Lake Park's condos. They're not that big.
Viz Queen and 2x4s.
Yeah,
just
or
make
it's the same
yourself
thing.
a-
I mean,
Yeah, I've seen guys
Negative
paint their cars in
like
their
an
garage.
asbestos setup.
Hey.
I'm watching Dexter.
That's an idea for, never mind.
Moving on. Love that show.
I see what you're
So, yeah, I think this one gets tabled as well, like the last one, where we need him in front of us to talk a little bit deeper about what he's really intending that space for use.
And what do we do with interpretation of an enthusiast and hobbyist as it links back to services?
saying. Yeah, our interpretation of just the word service.
Well, and that's what Mary was trying to clarify. When you're working on your vehicle, you're servicing your vehicle. That doesn't mean it's a paid scenario, paid service.
That's why she interpreted it,
Yeah.
though, but, you know, how other people would interpret it a different way also, is that I would interpret it as a service, automotive service is that you're providing business to someone. That would be
Right.
my interpretation.
Thank you
If
for
you go to a
your.
service center, it's a business, you know.
Right, I think we have to address that word hobbyist and incorporate that into our code on
Define it.
various different zoning levels. Because there's hundreds of people in this village that service vehicles in their own garages every day. I mean,
I just changed,
change your oil,
I just changed my tires on my car.
right,
Bust me!
you know,
what is there a difference between, you
I guess
take the
voting
risk
letter
of burning your
that's
garage down?
not service.
No other tenant is affected by that. If
That's maintenance.
Go into an industrial setting.
Is it?
Oh, my God, hurts.
Yeah,
Right.
all right.
But I think if you throw a hobbyist tag on it.
If you define
you know,
hobbyist,
it-
you could say you're
You
limited
want,
to
you want to get a
hobbyist.
Lake Park storage condo to work on your Corvette or, you know, a place in the industrial park, fine. I think we have to put a limit on, you know,
Yeah, if I'm tuning my buddy's Holly for him, he's not paying me though. I don't know. It's gray area.
I think you'd have to say that,
It can't be for profit. I mean, it can't be.
Yeah,
a-
just- you have to say
something-
you're not making profit.
Yeah, it can't be a billable event. Whatever you are doing inside of there can't be a billable event. Otherwise, it needs to be tied to a business, and that opens up a whole other Pandora's box.
I don't think we can put that in zoning now.
I
'cause
know,
it's
I'm
a
not saying that
use-based
verbiage,
regulation.
but, you know,
Yeah.
to me, that's where the two lines are. It's like, okay, if you're really doing it for yourself, okay, you're doing it for yourself. If you're doing it for a buddy and you're getting paid cash or what have you, then that's,
what if it's my mom?
oh, come on.
You know what, I'm playing devil's advocate here, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Come on, man, my mom's car broke down, I can't.
Yeah,
This is
so
money.
these are all gonna be kind of word of mouth guys, right? So in the Lake Park Center, they're gonna say, you know,
I think
Jim
Lake
up in
Park
Building
might bring a
11.
little different element. I think Lake Park, you might be looking at more of the, you know, 69 Chevelle guys, you know, the hot rods, you know,
Sure.
already finished, looking to store them, maybe wash them, tune them up a little bit.
You never know, though.
Is that zoned like?
Right, a
industrial?
project car too. You
Is,
never know.
what Lake Park zone is that like industrial? then, or-
B3.
B3.
Is that B3?
Yeah. So I think what I was going to say is that you might just want to have a policy about how you interpret personal use applications. If somebody gives you an application, and I will ask them, so are you making this application as a personal use operation only? And if they say, yes, I am, then still their use has to comply with the overlying, or the underlying zoning.
How do we address that?
Yeah, because we don't have,
Because I mean,
We don't have
the zoning laws are ridiculous if you're working on your own vehicle.
well, in the B3, they can do anything engine and tire related,
I
they
go-
just can't do auto body.
Go back to R1. All the residents in the village that work on their own vehicle in their garage, change the oil.
But we don't require site plan of operations approval in residential districts.
No, but I bet you it's specifically, well, it's forbidden to run a business out of a residential district unless otherwise,
Modification.
yeah. So, I'm just trying to work through this on how you can allow someone to work on their own vehicle if it's for personal use.
I don't think I have, I don't think I have the brain power to figure that out on the fly here. To be honest, I think I might
No,
want to
that's
talk to
why-
Mike about it.
Big can of worms.
It is.
It's good timing for it.
And Mike's a car guy,
Definitely good timing based on. that.
so I think he understands and maybe empathizes with that crowd.
I think Mike knows exactly what this is, because we had this discussion way back early in the Lake Park process about what are we,
Shoulder.
Mike Shover. But we shelved it thinking until it's approved, why not, yeah,
Well, it's gotta come to the front real quick now.
flex our brain muscles that hard back then.
What was the urgency on this application? You said it just came in Friday, so.
It did. I don't recall him saying that, gee, all of a sudden somebody surprised me and said I need to get planning commission approval before I can move in. So I honestly can't say that I know that they're under like a time crunch to get in there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think we handled this like the last one. We
Yeah,
tabled it and
I
asked them
agree.
to attend the next meeting for more detail and
Is that
truly
an
try.
official motion?
Yeah, that is my motion, yes.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second.
Nobody showed up to,
Right.
we just had our last conversation on Friday about this and the meeting and everything, so.
Motion and a second. Mary's gonna talk to the attorney about this too prior to next.
Have that information.
I will
prior
as
to the
well.
meeting too.
Right.
Makes sense.
So maybe we can address the definition first and then have this as a
Follow-up topic.
follow-up topic
Right.
for the approval of it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5C, review, discussion, and feedback to village staff regarding the possibility of adding specific permissions/regulations as to the parking of portable on-demand storage containers in some or all of the village's various zoning districts.
So, we see these things pop up sometimes in the village. And then also, there are people who wonder, can I put a pod in my yard? And if I can, what are the limitations? And without any regulations in the code about them, there's really no good answer to give them with any sense of authority or sureness. So, in response to that, I drafted kind of a really broad-reaching edition of potential pods regulations. And in this case, I broke it into two sections. One would be for residential, one would be for commercial and industrial. And it's not on the agenda for action tonight, it's on for review, discussion, and feedback to staff about whether, and if yes, how would you like to proceed with this? I think it's worth putting the regulations into the code, so we know what to tell people, and so people know what they're allowed to do. I'm not suggesting that it requires a permit at all, except in the commercial and industrial environments where if they're there for the long haul, in lieu of building an accessory storage building, which is a taxable thing for the village, we don't want to let semi-trailers and shipping containers become the new form of warehousing on our commercial and industrial sites. So this ordinance would help address that as well.
I mean, like Walmart does that, when
yeah.
there's seasonal loads for,
I called Mary on this one because there's suddenly a very large glut of storage containers becoming available. There's communities up north in Wisconsin that literally have tens of thousands of them in a farm field, just sitting there.
You mean like intermodal containers?
Yep.
Throw back on a ship, let's go.
They're just building more and they don't want them back.
Yeah, it costs too much to ship it back empty.
What?
Yep.
Yeah, construction industry is basically going to all the container-based storage on sites. So instead of trailers and that, they just pop these containers. When it's done, it goes back to the recycler.
So I asked Mary to look at this so we don't get
surprise, yeah.
and I don't mean any disrespect by this, but some property owner here that has 30 acres and wants to just pile it up with storage containers. We don't have anything to stop them from doing it right now.
Did you draft this off of some other communities?
I found Glendale's pod storage container regulations and really just kind of built from there. So the frame, and I think theirs are only residential. That's how I used those same residential bullet points and moved them down to the commercial industrial. And if you compare this to the Glendale online, you'll see they're a lot different. I took what was great out of theirs and I just ran from
I take it then that there must not be a lot of communities around this area that do have current regulations
Yeah,
for
I'm
this.
kind of surprised that that's a law you wouldn't be able to find.
Wauwatosa has something to the training center that I work out of, we do have 2 of these pod storage units. And, you know, we ran out of space in the building to store stuff. And they were very strict that they could not be visible from the street. They had to have a firm base, gravel base underneath them. Because they wouldn't let us expand the building because we would take away parking and we needed the parking. So there was an area where we could put 2 of these containers, but yes, they were behind the building, not visible from the street.
So there were some.
And are they permanent?
They're not permanently installed because our hope is to get rid of them, but for the time being, because of lack of space in the building, that's what Wauwatosa gave the school, the provisions of what you had to do in order to have them.
I think we need to kind of attack this from 2 different angles, one from residential side and then the other one from the commercial industrial. Residential being, yeah, someone might want one for 30 days or 60 days to do a remodel.
I had one for.
Moving it in
2
up.
weeks.
Yeah,
I had it rented for a month, I only used it for 2 weeks, and they picked it back up. I had to empty the garage so they could do the flooring.
and just looking at what Mary has drafted here too, I mean, we've got a size of 10 by 20 by 10 on there, which is the smallest. I don't know that size is important. A shipping container or a pod is a shipping container and a pod. They only get so big, 48 feet, I believe, is the longest, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I mean, if Tony owns a trucking company and he has access to them for free, and he's doing a remodeling job, why would he go buy one that fits our size when he can bring one home and use his for 30 days and take it back?
So from the size standpoint, do you want me to just go through this kind of
Yeah.
really quick and we'll sort of stop on each point and see what people think about that? So first of all, I think the important part is the definition. So it includes containers that are delivered for short-term personal on-site storage of goods and supplies accessory to that premises, whether the container is fabricated of steel, wood, or similar durable materials. It may include truck boxes, shipping containers, semi-trailers, whether wheeled or not, licensed, registered, and operable semi-trailers actively used in the conduct of an approved business operation on the premises are not considered pods. Okay. Everybody feel pretty, like that's pretty
yeah.
all-encompassing?
Straight, yeah.
Okay, so here we're talking about the residential limitations. First of all, you cannot have more than 1 pod on the property at any one time.
Mary?
Yep.
So the definition would be for both residential and industrial that you just read?
The purpose, or yeah, that part.
Just wanted to make sure. Sorry to
Yep.
interrupt you.
No more than 1 pod on a property at any one time. That pod cannot be larger, any pod cannot be larger than 10 feet wide, 20 feet long, and 10 feet high. Now we're in residential here. I'm wide open to
And some residentials have pretty large lots. There's some pretty big houses in the village that I think could easily fill 1 or 2 pods if they were moving in, out, or remodeling, major remodel job.
Well, it kind of catches it at H for any exceptions, maybe reviewed, considered, and possibly approved. It would give us a trigger point. If somebody wants to move in a 48 footer, we could ask them, because first of all, we've got some very narrow, hard to access type streets. If you try to bring in a 48 foot and either crane it off or roll it off the back of a truck, you're going to have some potential issues. It may be worth our while to leave it at 20, and then that way it would trigger a review to, at least staff level review, I would assume. But
Sure.
something just to verify, validate that they're not gonna get themselves into trouble and do structural damage or something even more so, trying to get that in and out. I don't know, just,
And it may be better going with 220s. And at that point, it triggers a review there, right? Well, just for ease of moving them in and out.
But even that would be reviewed because only 1 was allowed here. So
Correct.
I got you.
Okay, that's fair enough.
So we're gonna stay with 1, we're gonna stay with that size.
Like I said,
Understanding.
Tony said that H kind of gives us ability to handle exceptions, case by case.
Next, a pod cannot remain on a property that is zoned or used principally for residential purposes for more than 30 consecutive days, nor more than 30 cumulative days in any year. So you can use them all at once, or you can break it up into different periods, but not more than 30 total.
Well, what about a construction remodel where you're gonna have, you're gonna put your stuff out of that area, or have a contractor in there for 2 months, and then,
That's H.
That's an exception.
I mean, is it more the duration of a building permit? So if you're doing it for construction purposes, it's the duration of the building permit, or 30 days, or up to the duration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
I
could be an
suppose
option.
you could need one if you're building a new home, get your drywall delivered, you wanna keep it in a pod so it doesn't get rained on in the spring.
Some people can let their building permits linger unnecessarily, so we don't want to get into that mess.
Yeah, and again, I think H still gives us that catch-all from a staff review, of, hey, if somebody comes forward and says, I need it because I'm doing a remodel or I'm finishing my basement and it's a 2-month project.
Yep.
The staff review could say, okay, that's the exception, we'll grant that, you can have it for 60 days instead of trying to weave in some kind of verbiage related to, like you said, a building
Yeah.
permit.
Okay.
It's good to have
Yeah, we're gonna
catch-alls.
want to build some staff approval into that H. I
Yeah.
think that's an important thing, yeah. So for now, that 30 and 30, is that a reasonable baseline? You want
Yeah.
to throttle it up a little bit?
So for a whole year, you can only have a pod for 30 days. Whether it's one full 30 days or you break it up into 5-day rentals 6 times.
Have it for a week, every other month.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to do in my head that day.
Yeah,
That's what you'd wanna do.
No, but I'm just thinking how annoying that'd get if you're their neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Can I bury one in my backyard and make it an underground bunker?
Now we're talking.
Yeah. Pretty sure that's allowed in the residential district.
Well, I guess it's on.
We got that.
They're killing these container home businesses, remember?
Okay, moving along.
All right, so we'll stick with that for now.
Yeah.
I don't see people inclined to want to
It's very
run them in, run them
specific.
out, run them in, it's,
Mm,
you know.
Well, the other thing too is, obviously, the longer you keep it, the more you end up paying. So
Sure.
it's obviously to your benefit to only keep it for
It's
30 days or
some
less.
places charge you pickup and drop-offs. So if you were to break it up every other month for 5 days or what have you, or for a week, I mean, you're gonna be paying more for that too.
But that's a rental one, you can purchase these
Correct,
things.
yeah, that was
And
obviously.
that's where the issue comes about.
Mhm.
Someone
Right.
has a storage shed, they're
Yeah.
gonna buy one, throw it in their backyard.
For 30 days, then they're ripping their storage shed out.
Well, these aren't storage sheds.
I know.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's his
Yeah.
terminology, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But, okay, so item D, unless it's parked on a permitted hard-surfaced driveway or parking area, no pod can be located between the principal structure and the street line. So none in the front yard unless they are on an approved, and then the next E follows that. No pod can be placed in or encroach upon the public right-of-way of any publicly owned or on any publicly owned property without the express written consent of the Village of Big Bend before it's placed there.
That makes sense.
So it's good those are back to back, because yes, you can have it in front of your house on the driveway, but only if it fits. So if you only have a 10-foot driveway, you're gonna have it parked right at the front wall of the house to stay out of the right of way. F, no pod can be placed in the required minimum side yard, rear yard, or the required vision clearance triangle of any type. So what's missing there is that you could put it alongside your house, not in the required side yard, so you have to keep 20 feet off or 10 feet, whatever it is in your district,
10.
off your side lot line.
Yeah, if you got a decent sized lot, you could drop it on the side of the house in the grass.
Do we want to require that it be on a hard surface,
Well, that's the next line,
on the approved?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
See, you were thinking that.
line G.
Oh, good, okay, good. And then H is where we provide exceptions. So the way it's written right now, everything would come to the planning commission? Yeah,
Not everything.
No, I
No, I've
think
got-
staff review is really
Eyeball
good for this
questions.
one.
Tom threw something out there and so did Tony.
yep.
What about someone like Kelly who'd wanna buy his own shipping container, put it in his backyard, side it, put a grass thatch roof on it, and open it up as a recreational area?
Now we're talking. I already got one on order. No, wait, it's not allowed in like
I was
parks.
just gonna say.
You know,
Spray booth in the-
it's not a
Yeah,
dwelling,
that
it's
too.
it's not a
Paint stuff.
storage container, you're using it as a,
Then it's an accessory storage building.
And it has to follow the rules around
That's
that.
why you have
Yeah.
to bury it in your backyard. It becomes
You only
your-
get 30
Not
days.
below grade. You do it at
30
night,
days
so
with
nobody
that, yeah,
sees.
but if you were, can you use a pod as an accessory storage building?
No, you've got to be on an approved, on a permitted hard surface driveway or parking area.
Yeah, there you go. That
So
catches
you pour a
that.
concrete slab in the backyard and
Concrete
put it
slab.
on there.
That's not a parking area, you gotta have a driveway to go to it, for it to be a parking
I
area.
think you're saying it's a shed, basically.
Right, yeah, what if someone were to try and use it as a shed?
People,
Put siding.
I think people will.
people actually.
Right, that's why I'm
Yeah.
trying to,
But in order
Get
to
this
do that, you still
conversation.
have to go through inspection and Vince and Jason and all that for an accessory building of some sort.
There's businesses that actually build intermodal containers into backyard bars.
right,
Backyard.
I've seen them,
Yeah, it's all
they're
these-
cool.
He was
It's all the
fishing it.
Milkman.
The milkman stage,
Yeah.
like that,
Right.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right.
at the rock.
Pretty neat.
That's what he wants to do in his backyard.
Mhm.
So I just think we need to address that somehow, maybe in the accessory building area that either we allow or don't allow
Pods to be used.
shipping containers, yeah.
Shipping containers for constructed buildings.
Well, when you
Does
talk
it like-
about, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
when you talk about put, like, say, the guy's gonna lay a slab in his backyard and put it in his backyard, but don't we address that like right out the gate, that you can't keep it more than 30 days?
Yes.
Right, but I'm saying, what if it's not being
But then,
used as
but then it crosses the line. It's not a pod, it's a storage facility.
And I think
Or
the
an
It's
accessory
my
building.
outside bar, it's my accessory building, and I don't know where we have to address that.
But that doesn't get
Accessory,
addressed-
I think it's gonna come up pretty quick.
Sure, but that doesn't
You're
get
right.
addressed via this, it gets addressed something else.
I
That's
think
it.
the definition takes care of
Yeah, this handles the rental slash temporary use of pods. That is a different, valid different concern, but needs to be addressed elsewhere in the code. Not as part of this.
Could you put verbiage in there that any and all pods shall have to come under review to be used for long-term storage or something like that?
I'm gonna look at the accessory storage buildings language in the code, and
But the accessory storage had to match the primary residence
it does.
construction.
Yeah.
So I think
So
that would knock out your pod right there because you
Yeah,
have
so
to almost be out of the
outside
pod.
Oh.
Oh, wait a minute, you can't require that I use wood studs versus steel studs,
Versus
one versus,
hot
you
wall.
know, I mean,
No,
as long as
exterior
the exterior look, if I put a window in the side and make it the same siding and
Siding,
roof,
yeah.
I mean, who cares that it's a pod underneath? That's probably more structurally sound than anything you wanna build.
Or tornado proof.
Why would we object to that? Why would we have to even deal with that? I mean, if you wanna put an accessory building out there and you meet the code in
Right.
terms of
And
size
you
and
dress
lot
up the
size.
pig with lipstick,
I just,
then what's the problem?
I can see this coming down a pipe somewhere and
No, I think
I
it's
just wanted
something
to,
we do have to address. Look at the accessory code and see how it fits in.
but this is for storage, so let's carry on.
Good side, good discussion.
So
On the fourth?
on H, what do we want to allow staff to approve? Staff can approve up to 60 days and up to 2 containers. I mean, what are gonna be the,
30
what are
day
gonna be the
extension
flip?
twice. So if you have a construction project, you're building a house, you get 30 days, you get a 30-day extension.
You can come ask for an
You gotta
extension.
ask a second time, you get another 30 days.
Yeah, I think that makes more sense, because otherwise, if you interpret it differently, somebody could have a pod multiple times a year, right? As opposed to for the one project, right? So if it is a full-blown remodel or something significant, they're gonna want that pod for that, from day 1 to up to 90. It's not gonna be for 30 days, and then they wait a couple months, and they get another one for 30 days, getting around the loophole of only 30 total in a year.
Well, they might have 2 really good reasons for needing a pod twice, too.
Well, then, again, that.
Yeah, you're remodeling
I
your
guess
foyer.
that gets addressed, as an exception that
Yeah.
comes forward, but.
Or the kid home from college thing too, where the kid comes home with all their stuff and they put a pod out for the summer.
No, you just take your garage.
Or mother-in-law residence.
That's
You get pause, right?
Hopefully she's not watching.
So you
Yeah,
guys, granny pods?
I would,
It sounds like a business.
I would think we could allow staff to grant a 30-day extension or one additional 10 by 20 pod.
So a 30-day extension in either case, either as a part of the cumulative days
Correct.
or as a part of the consecutive days.
Right, yeah, 30, you can grant 30 extra days.
Yeah, I mean, we can always review this for change later if we start to see requests for more than that and they're justified. It's a good starting point.
So that would be the
Days,
only
one
ones.
extra pod.
So you can basically double A and
And C.
C.
Okay, so on what basis would staff ever say no to that? I can't, we're not gonna sit there and go, well, that's not a good enough reason.
No.
So should we just be increasing the threshold number?
Mhm.
Make them ask for it.
I would make them ask for it, otherwise it doesn't encourage timeliness.
Okay.
Yeah.
For justifiable cause? No, I'll deal with it, I'll get it in there, bring it back next month. So then, moving on to property zoned for institutional, commercial, or industrial purposes. They're all subject to review and approval by the planning commission through plan of operations review and approval process.
So with that approval process, does this grandfather in everything that's out there right now? Or would they have to, once we approve this, would they have to come and get that?
It would grandfather everything that's there now.
Legal non-conforming like the other stuff would be. If they come forward for something else related to the site plan and operation, that opens that door, but otherwise they are able to continue use as is.
So all the 18-wheelers that are permanent storage over in industrial park is grandfathered in on it?
At this
You can
point,
you can put a sunset on it. A lot of communities do that with signs. Legal non-conforming signs can remain for, 2 years.
I mean, we're going on what, year 4.5 now in Lake Park, and there's 18-wheelers that are not using that amount of time. They don't have any back doors to them, and they've got cars shoved in the back of them. I mean,
Yeah, it's an option.
I'd almost like to say something about some grandfather, some sunset clause in there for pre-existing temporary storage. I don't know what everybody else is feeling on that. There's quite a few places in the industrial park, Inspector Bronk, you see them sometimes. I mean, they've been in there for a long time. There's a lot of old cars and stuff in the back of these 18-wheelers. There's a lot of old cars and junkers and stuff laying around on the outside of them too, but I don't know if we wanna try to address that while we're working on the rest of this or not.
I mean, if you put that sunset in there, all it does is it creates a tickler for the village to become a proactive enforcer at some future date. But in the meantime, exactly what trustee Renner said is that anytime somebody comes forward, like Dan Miner's site that we talked about tonight, if he happened to have pods on there, we could have made that a condition of his approval tonight, that he would also have to remove those pods.
Or follow these rules, whatever they may be that apply,
So some share of them will go away by attrition, maybe not in 2 years, but maybe in 5 years.
The sunset date could be amended too.
They could be amended to be approved.
The sunset date.
Could be
amended.
changed.
You know, you've got an issue with somebody seriously objecting, you can give them, okay, there's another 6 months before that sunset date.
Yeah, you can approve them as a part of the site plan
Yeah, with some kind of
review
a
process.
further date out.
I guess the consensus would have to be is, do we think I mean, you're bringing up some issues with some trailers, stuff with cars or whatever. But what's the overall consensus? Is it an issue in the village? Do we get complaints about it? Do we hear about it? Is it unsightly? Is it not safe? Is it not passing inspections? You know, I'm not against a sunset date, is it a problem? You know, I don't know.
I'm kind of torn both ways on it too. I mean, if I owned a business, an industrial park down there and had 20 trailers on there for 30 years, nobody said anything until now, and all of a sudden it's an issue and I gotta get rid of them in the next
2 years or something?
whatever. You know, it's gonna cost me how many thousands of dollars to get those things back up to roadworthy and moving.
But they shouldn't have been in there in the first place.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, looking at the aerial just for that minor property there, you can see quite a few.
I mean, this will be a firestorm,
That's what I'm just saying, yeah, it's gonna be.
you know, for several business owners back there, I'm sure.
See this? There's quite a few on
That's
this.
one
mean-
of us.
And, you know, that's the whole thing, you know, oh, you got airplanes flying over my house. Well, you built a house next to an airport.
Yeah.
You know, it goes both ways. Don't leave garbage on your business, and if you move next to an industrial park, you gotta kind of deal with what's there too.
Well, see, a lot of them trailers that are in there are used for storage, believe it or not. And some of them are there because they broke down or they need to be repaired. Cost-wise, so far, everything else, we'll do it some other day, but they keep going year by year by year, and they should be removed, they should be gone, they shouldn't be there. That's my view. You've got on the end of Bucket Street facing east, across from old Horn Brothers building over there. Stuff that's stored in there, it's equipment, it's very usable equipment, it's always in good shape, so far, everything else. But the way it's stored, the way it's set up there, it looks like a junkyard. But if you go way out on the far end of where Artesian Avenue is, and you go by Armin's Trucking, and he has got a lot of old vehicles there, which he rebuilt and works on and drives them, but he parks it nice and straight and neat looking, where other people don't. And that's where you're gonna come into conflict.
I don't think you can distinguish based on legally unless you're gonna have some sort of screening requirements or something for them, but again, if you're gonna invoke change, get away from these non-taxable warehouse solutions
Right.
and build some buildings.
Exactly.
I think in the example I brought up, you have a building that you can't, you know, add on to it. If it's, you know, on a concrete pad or on a firm surface and it's not in a visible line of sight to the road, Why can't they have it for 6 months or a year?
Well, for 6 months or a year,
Yeah,
I would think the planning commission would entertain that for approval, but, you know, if your lot's too small to accommodate a small warehouse building or a warehouse addition onto the building, then why do we want to put a field of semi-trailers there instead? Because it takes up the same space, it has a much uglier appearance. I mean, I'd rather give up a variance to expand the building if you have the room to park all those trucks.
When we talk about sunset too, what are we talking about time? 2 years, 5 years, 3 years?
Mary, what have you seen out there?
On signs, I've seen 5 years, and that's really the
Primary.
most relevant,
Yeah.
you know,
On signs.
analogy I can come up with. Up to 3 are allowed on commercial properties.
There's a lot of them out there right now that's got more than, crazy amount more than 3.
But that's still subject to the site plan
Right.
and operations approval. So
Right.
where they would be.
So it'd be grandfathered in unless we put a sunset clause on it, they could still have that for, until they would change their business.
Should we keep plowing through this?
Yeah,
I mean, a
let's
lot of
do
them are
it.
the same, obviously, than the, as the residential, there's exceptions as far as quantity, the length.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see one with a size for a full trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Everything else is the same.
It is, so even that 30 days, consecutive and cumulative, even that number is the same. Do you treat that any differently?
I think that might be a little light for industrial or
Industrial use.
commercial.
Want to go with 90, 3 months worth?
That's
I
probably
mean,
more
you're doing a
appropriate.
reorganization or something like that, every facility, and you're gonna get those there to store stuff while you're reorganizing, that's longer than a 30-day process.
Right.
Is it
Yeah.
longer than 90?
I think you do the same thing as you do a residential, 90 days and then allow an
Give
additional
them
90
one
days.
extension.
Take a look at Walmart in Muskego. They have had pods on their parking lot for about 6 months now.
Because of the
They're
reorganization.
remodeling the inside of the store and moving everything all around.
Well, you have something in here, additional regulations, that if it's a construction activity, pods associated with the construction activity, I would say would not be part of this. This is, I guess.
Yeah, there's verbiage in there saying
Yeah.
basically during the
If
construction.
this
you
is
can have
a
it,
business
it has to be
that
written.
wants to reorganize their warehouse shelving or something like that, where they're gonna put 3 pods in the parking lot, it's gonna take them 90 days or an additional 90 days to do it. But
Yeah, at the bottom of the.
eventually, there's a reason to get them out of there. In construction, it's a year.
Yeah, well, and she catches that in the A of the additional regulations, so that's kind of different. Basically, you can have it during the whole construction and you gotta remove it 14 days of either nothing happening or 14 days after construction is done. Which I think is good, because that helps
Mhm.
clarify the two types of different
Mhm.
activities.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we said, 90 days instead of 30, and then have the one extension,
Okay.
staff review. And what about the 3 pods? Did we're gonna allow staff review to double that? Like we did on residential, or? 6 seems a little excessive, even though some may already have it.
Yeah, I think it depends on, well, you gotta review the property. I mean,
Yeah.
how many acres of land you have, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we could allow the doubling.
620 acre
Again,
lot.
there's a staff review catch there, so.
Yeah.
There's 6 on 7,500 square foot lot.
Right.
There's a big difference.
Yeah. Again, staff review.
If you put something in there that can have encroach on the access to the property, so that they don't put a pod where you've got a driveway coming in and out, where you're encroaching or impeding the access to the property.
Well, that's on H, and H actually states that you could put it on a permitted driveway, and I think that we really need to take a close look at that because it would impede access.
And my thought is the fire truck access.
Exactly.
Well, maybe that's the verbiage that goes in there. Pod must be placed on a permitted driveway or parking area, but not to impede access to the property.
Yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Just extra little bit on that one sentence for both H's there,
Yeah,
or H on the,
Not to
On the one.
impede safe ingress egress.
yeah.
yeah, on residential and
It's
commercial.
different, resident, yeah.
Yep.
She said 90 days,
90 with an extension of one extra 90, and then 3 pods with the possibility of 6 total. Again, both
Okay.
rules for staff review.
I'll put language in there that, up to double the amount of time and up to double the number of containers, staff may approve. If staff doesn't feel comfortable with the approval, you can elevate it to planning commission.
sure.
We have that in for certain other things like fences with building inspectors' approvals and things like that. They have to observe the side yard, rear yard, and vision clearance triangles. Keep them out of those areas. I is the set of exceptions.
Which is the same as the other H.
Yep.
Okay. And then we'll have the verbiage in there about staff review.
Yep.
Okay.
And then down under additional regulations, Kelly mentioned the permission for pods to be on active construction sites when there's a building permit that's been issued. And they can stay there without limit, basically. As long as the construction activity is ongoing, 14 days after it's done, or if the site's gonna go dormant for more than 14 days, they have to take them out of there. B, that the pods are not intended to be permitted in lieu of constructing sufficient area within permitted principal and accessory storage buildings on residentially zoned or used properties, or to replace the use of leasable off-site storage facilities as needed to support the long-term storage needs of residential uses. This should really say on residentially, on all properties.
But do we need that in there, considering what we're doing with all the other bullet points? You know what I mean? We're limiting how long they can use them.
Yeah.
You know?
It was more of me just trying to impart to you guys the basis for doing this at all. One of the bases for doing this. Strike it?
I think B and C, to a certain degree, we're covering based on having all these other regulations around these things for both types of properties.
I like C.
Yeah, but I almost wonder if C, again, goes into that accessories building verbiage that we're gonna have Mary look into anyways, you know what I mean? To cover that scenario, as opposed to the temporary pod thing.
I like the first part of B, where the use of pods is not intended to be permitted in construction sufficient area within permitted principal and accessory storage buildings. So basically telling them, if you're gonna use the pod as a building, you gotta comply with the accessory buildings.
Then you could almost argue that that type of verbiage goes into the purpose up top. Put it
Yeah.
right in front of them, don't have it under back at the very end of here.
You're right.
Put that thing right in that first paragraph when they're reading
Sure.
through this, so they
Yeah.
get a full understanding of what this is supposed to be used for.
Am I reading?
Well, I kind of actually like the verbiage in B and C. I'll use the example of a company that I used to work for. They stored all of their additional supplies in pods out in their parking lot, in the back end of 18-wheelers. So they actually went so far as to put up wooden stairs and like a decking so that they could go to a second level of pods that were up and to the back end of 18-wheelers and safely maneuver stuff around, and had it set up as not only for supplies but also for some of the back-end materials that they would bring back in and have to recycle, like wastes and stuff like that.
I totally get that, but you're looking at more of a permanent storage solution, and these other rules that we've already went through stop that from even happening, because there are limits on how long they can have something. If they, for 30 days, if they wanna go that extravagant, have at it, knowing they're gonna take that thing down as soon as they're done.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying we're kinda covering a lot of that there, but there is some, I think, some value in throwing some verbiage up on the very front end, saying,
Right.
hey, just to set expectations, this is temporary, and it's supposed to be temporary, it's not.
That's kind of where B and C's going too. is
True,
this-
that's what I'm saying,
this
use
is
some of the
noticeable.
verbiage up front and the
Right.
purpose.
Yeah, instead of having it all the way in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But it is, it's a paradigm shift, you know, from the old,
The old school.
and it's usually a very rural, you know, kind of a setting where you expect to see some of these small industries and businesses using that kind of thing, where they actually prop the wooden steps up and so on. But you have a zoning code, you have architectural standards, you have offsets and setbacks, you have, you know, you have standards in the village and should be working away from, you know, the old vision of, you know, store your stuff in a semi-trailer.
One note I mean also on the commercial, you know, the use of these pods and them connecting utilities to them and using for other uses than storage. You know, bringing power, water, something out, gas heaters, but even though they're temporarily on the property, you know, you've got maybe a manufacturing place where they wanna, you know, do some accessory function, and they put a pod on the property for performing operation inside that. I think if you put something in there to say no power, water, utilities are permitted, other than on a temporary basis. You know, temporary lighting, I can totally understand accessing it. But if you start running water, gas lines and heaters out to these things, try to use them.
Run gas and water for 90 days.
I can't
It
go in that there's.
seems expensive. Power I can see, you know, like you need lights out there, you know, if you're running in and out at night and you don't
I
want
mean,
people.
in the construction environment, there's semi-trailers that are set up to come on site and perform machine shops and that type of thing, but you don't wanna make that something where somebody's gonna try to do that as a business, you know, add to the business.
Yeah, like the company I used to work for, because they ran heat and they ran well, it was electric heat, but they had heat and electricity out there. They had computer access. I mean, they basically used it for a cheap building, that's what it was.
And that's what my thoughts
Tax free
is.
too.
If you put something in there that you can have any permanent provisions for utilities, obviously a temporary power or a temporary situation is in the 90 days, that's what the electrical code and the building code is gonna say you're allowed to do it for. That they don't actually put in, you know, an underground electrical feed knowing that they're gonna try to keep these things
Yeah,
for a permanent time.
Where we have to lean on our building and fire inspectors and trust that they catch these things,
Well, again, that's.
Well, and it gives them
Timeline.
the ability to say, oh, you gotta get rid of it.
right?
The code says you can't have that.
yeah,
Don't even think of it.
yeah. I don't think we would approve a permanent electrical service being run out to a pod. I think Jason would flag that as, you know, what are we doing?
This has been eye-opening to me. I mean, when I worked for that company, I never would have thought twice about it, I guess.
No?
But this, whenever I saw this the first time a couple of days ago, I was like, it was
It makes
definitely
sense.
an eye-opener. It does make sense.
The president brought it up.
He wants those guys with corporates moving in industrial buildings. Pods in the backyard.
So you got your notes for changing,
I do,
bring it back in?
yeah.
All right. Moving on. Item 6, planners report for October, November 2021.
I don't have anything.
Item 7, fire inspectors report.
No report at this time, everything is good, have a good, happy Thanksgiving, and a safe Thanksgiving.
Blood drive day,
And blood drive, yeah, what is that? I
December,
forgot.
I got it in my calendar.
Yeah.
I thought you'd know off the top of your head.
Yeah, I should know that off the top of my head, but I was so
Mine's-
doggone busy.
I'll look it up.
17th,
That's the
17th,
blood
okay.
center that's gonna be here?
yeah.
Yeah. And you can register ahead of time too, make appointments and that, just call.
Excellent.
That number will be on the sign, I do believe.
Right.
Right.
Anything from the building inspector?
He says sweep all got an occupancy permit.
Good.
That's all. That's all.
Congratulations.
And they're
Right
nearly
on.
done with all of their improvements, their landscaping, I gave them a
Unreal.
little extension for some of it next spring, but, they've waited all summer for that brick material and for the front wall. They still came up one or two pieces short.
Oh, frustrating.
I know.
All right, item 9, engineers report. Naomi.
Lake Park storage condos. So our last meeting, we talked about this development a lot. I got, as-built set of plans for the stormwater management facility. Did a review, I had a couple comments. Essentially the spillway was a little too low, so they have to regrade it and then reshoot it. No big deal, really. And then verification of the pond liner. When we had our pre-construction meeting, we told the developer several times that we needed to verify the layers, that it was 2 feet thick throughout. And that should be included on the as-built plan. So just a couple things. Oh, the riprap was off the property line, so I wanted approval of the adjacent property owner, which is still Jamin, but just verification to keep that, they already vetted it. So we did get that. We have potentially a engineering site visit to look at the items for the occupancy, there were 3 items that we were looking at that had to do with the roads and the paving and the bond.
When are you guys gonna do that? I might swing through
Oh,
and do the
yeah,
lighting and
okay.
the architecture at the same
Well,
time.
he wants to do it on Tuesday next week, but I don't have a time yet, so
I can't do Tuesday.
can't do Tuesday.
Slinger all day.
Well, if that doesn't happen, I'll keep you in the loop and we can go at the same time.
Okay, well, I'll just find a time on my own, probably on Monday,
Oh,
to
okay.
do that instead.
He wanted to be there for the site inspection, so I don't know, but he was out of the town this week.
I will touch base with him, you're right. Monday works for him.
And then the contaminated spoils from the roadway. One of the tasks was for me to follow up with DNR regarding any questions that we had out there. So I did send an email and then asking for him, actually I called him and then he called me back and then we talked and then I sent a follow-up email with three things I wanted confirmation on. We discussed the following items of concern. Number 1, the spoils from the roadway excavation contain contaminant levels above acceptable limits. The sampling results were provided to the village and Wisconsin DNR by the applicant. Asking them, do you have any concerns with the construction of the access road, placement of impermeable surface over the landfill given the sampling results? The second question I had put in writing was that we understand the applicant intends to dispose of the contaminated spoils off-site in the landfill. Should the spoil pallets be tarped and covered in the interim? And then thirdly, given the spoils from the roadway construction contain contaminants, does this create any concern with respect to the stormwater discharge from the adjacent development site being discharged across the landfill site? I have attached the approved plan set for his review. So he said that he was going to get together with his team and reply in writing. So I followed up, I hadn't heard anything, so I followed up this week on Tuesday asking if he had time to follow up and could provide us with any information. And then he requested a meeting on site. So the meeting is set up, no, it's not on site, it's a Zoom meeting. And it's set up for the 30th of November, because he's off all week.
29th, right?
29th, you're right, it is the 29th, you just checked my schedule. So Monday, it's Monday the 29th, after Thanksgiving.
I don't know how detailed that meeting is gonna be.
Yeah.
That was a pretty open-ended email that he had sent to me.
Mhm.
Because he said he wants to talk about the landfill site. He didn't say he wants to talk about the spoils or Lake Park Condos development.
Okay, yeah, I guess,
And I told him, I said, well, if we're talking landfill, you have to include Vernon in
okay,
this meeting
Yeah,
because.
just that type of discussion versus.
Right, I said, we gotta be clear, and these have to be two separate and distinct conversations.
oh, see, I didn't even pick up that because I was focused on this, my email to him being the site.
Yeah, so I'm not real sure where he's going with this meeting on the 29th.
How would
but-
you, I mean, we got some time, reach out to him, have him clarify.
Right,
What's on the
Draw
topics
that,
to
draw that
discuss.
line.
yeah, we don't
I
wanna,
assumed it was my 3 questions.
Yeah.
But
I would
he
take
didn't-
the assumption too,
Right,
but if he
but he didn't
specifically called out the
verify.
landfill site, then I don't know.
Okay,
It probably is, I'm going to say probably, it's going to be a mix of both.
Yeah.
right, yes,
Address your 3
One doesn't
questions,
lie.
but then go into,
right,
he's getting a lot of phone calls, I'm sure. This is Joe Martinez, right?
yes, Joe Martinez, yes.
Yeah, so I'm sure he's getting a crazy amount of phone calls from the developer and with different entities from, at least our village,
Mhm.
maybe not Vernon, but he's probably going to want to discuss some of the larger, you know, the
Questions.
issues with the landfill itself. Your 3 questions are about the landfill site, it's about the easement and access
Mhm.
from how the other side is affecting the landfill basically. So, I would assume that, but yeah, clarification would be great, whatever we can know beforehand, so we got the right people
right,
listening in
Present.
on it. If he wants to talk about the bigger picture, then we need to make sure that we've got the right people to hear him, and address any concerns that we have, or just
Here's
absorb
what
the info.
his email said, Naomi and Jamin, I am hoping to set up a meeting so that we can all discuss the landfill site located at, gives the address, in the town of Vernon. The purpose of the meeting would be to make sure all parties are on the same page, make sure the DNR understands concerns associated with the property, and to explain DNR expectations regarding site investigation, remediation, and redevelopment. Good call.
Yeah, so that's definitely looking at that other.
Are you
Sure.
willing to participate in a call to discuss this site? I'm tentatively considering scheduling the meeting for this Friday. No, that didn't work out. But anyway, so,
Yeah, so that he's
Please.
he's going deeper than just the Lake Condo impact to it.
if the time works for everyone, I can provide a meeting invite with a link to Skype and a phone, and a call and phone. It has been set up. I have a link. I think we have a link already.
No, we can regardless clarify with him where that line needs to be drawn, otherwise other parties need to be present.
Okay. Is there someone at the Village of Vernon that we need to
I
specifically?
already included their president and their clerk and told them to share with whoever they felt they needed,
Okay.
whether it's engineers or attorneys or whatever, that's on them. I just wanted to make them aware of it, and I will forward it on to Mike and John and see which one of them wants to
Partake.
sit in and,
Okay.
and we've obviously got you and maybe Mike, I don't know. Probably just you, right?
Yeah, it would be me. I mean, unless you want Travis, would be the only other.
That's your call.
He was the environmental guy on your side, right?
Yeah.
Might make sense to have him there,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not comfortable necessarily, you know.
Yeah. I mean, my friend, I'd be comfortable.
Sure,
But
right.
if we go beyond that.
I get it, yeah.
Okay, I can ask him. To see if he can attend. Okay.
That'd be a Skype meeting, I mean, anybody can really just jump on.
That's nice. To listen in on the, okay. Any other questions about Lake Park storage condos? I did drive by there and I did see the berms and there was some stockpile there. Hoping to talk with Jamin about that on Monday when I meet him out there for the final inspection. I think that site has enough open area that should have a erosion control permit at a minimum for what's out there, because I think your erosion control permit, is 3,000 square feet of disturbance.
Didn't he?
I was gonna say, why wouldn't he?
I thought he had one.
No, oh wait,
Will's been doing inspections.
For the Lake Park site,
Oh,
but
right.
not for the landfill site. And that was one of the things we talked about at our pre-construction meeting, is if you're putting stuff over there,
Mhm. Gotcha.
I want a erosion control permit.
Yeah, no, that would make sense.
Because he's taking the spoils from the Lake Park condo side and putting it over there as top cover.
He might keep it there now, yes, that's the other thing, is he might,
Well, he's already spread it out. It's in the wooded area between the main landfill site and the road. It's
Oh.
it's 3-4 feet deep through there in some areas. I thought you guys knew that. I thought you discussed that. What I don't want to get us bogged down on it, but yeah, if you're talking about disturbance on the landfill site, then yeah, there's a considerable
minimum.
area
yeah.
that where he's removing soils from the other site that he's spreading out through there. Or at least I'm assuming that that's where the soils are coming from, but it's literally 3-4 feet deep in some places. I don't know why he's putting it on top of potentially contaminated,
Mm-hmm.
because now that soil's going to potentially be considered contaminated too.
So he might, the contaminated soil that we know about that stockpile, in my email to DNR, at the time we thought he had told us it was gonna be held off-site. That plan has changed, so then Damon said he might keep it on site, working with PSI and the DNR in his email about that change in plans. He did have DNR copy. So the question then being, what is DNR requiring for that, spreading the material? He's gonna keep it on site.
There's a state law that if you disturb contaminated soil, you can't place it back onto that site, so there would have to be a variance given for that.
Even though the whole site's contaminated?
That is correct.
Alright,
If you
this seems kinda
actually,
weird,
if
like,
you,
hey, you dug up a hole and it's contaminated,
Yeah,
and you can't just put it back in the hole?
Yeah.
I know that's your area of expertise,
Yeah,
and I'm
seems
like,
so.
man, yeah, why would you wanna spread it around?
we've gotten into issue with that in the past. So if you dig a hole and you're checking to see if it's contaminated, and taking a soil sample 5 feet down, you have to stockpile that soil if there's a concern that it's contaminated. If it comes back contaminated, you cannot put that soil back into, because it's considered disturbed soil. Unless you have a variance for it. If the DNR says, fine, just get it on an email and you can spread it back out.
Right.
Otherwise, it needs to find a home in a secured,
Yeah.
proper subtitle
Like it
D landfill, or subtitle C landfill.
Yeah, I did know, I was not thinking in those exact terms, but I did know the reuse was, even if it's data on the landfill site, he needed DNR to.
Unless something has changed.
And so that was, yeah,
It's just one of those little peculiarities,
right.
so.
Okay, so we'll make sure to clarify that.
Yeah, and it might be, the DNR might say, well, why wouldn't you just spread it back out on the same,
And we'll approve it.
yeah, who knows? It's fine if they do.
Any other questions about Lake Park?
What about some of the other items? Do you know offhandedly if any of the other checklisted items that need to be completed before occupancy, like electrical and sewer and things? Is there progress
No.
being made?
They were gonna put in sewer and well. Don't know if that, I haven't gotten any paperwork approvals from the county on that. So that hasn't happened yet. I did talk to him about the distancing of the septic lines,
Laterals?
the laterals and the well laterals. And, I got to thinking of why is this so difficult to get on the plan from somebody? Because they had to have a certified plumber get the plan approved by the county. And so, it got me thinking that really these are like private, this is a private system, not really a public improvement. Although the village has said that they would, take over whatever that agreement was. They have a common entity, but so I gave the statute to Jamin, and I said, this is what I'm trying to verify, that you're meeting these requirements. So he's gonna have the plumber take shots at the crossing of the storm sewers to verify what he's laying it.
Seems like that'll work. That's what you need, right? The verification
Yeah,
of
the
the distance, so is it more than
verification.
12 inches or whatever that?
Right, it's like
thing was?
18 one way,
Yeah,
12,
okay,
6 the other or something, yeah. depending on what goes under and over. Yeah, I mean, that's what I want to verify. It is private. I don't know that we get that amount of detail in like a single family home septic. You know, we just basically see a plan but it's a little different. I don't know that I'll get an engineer certified stamped plan, but we'll know where it is, and we told them these are the state statutes that you have to abide by, and that's what their permit from the county also says. So I don't know where else to go with that, I guess, other than having our guy out there shooting it while it's being put in, which would be kind of unusual for a private installation. Douglas Court?
Sure.
We had a nice field trip on a very cold Friday
With snow flying and everything.
at Douglas Court. Yeah, so there are several options that I guess are considered acceptable by both Kapoor and Public Works. And the field trip was to discuss the different options with the homeowners and how it would impact their properties, especially the concrete aprons coming out to the drive. I think it was a good discussion. I think people thought about the different options in a way they hadn't had we not been out there. So Mike Timmers is going to put together a list of the different options that were discussed, and the homeowners are going to talk amongst themselves and see, kind of give a feedback to the village board what they feel comfortable with, and then the village board will have to make a decision as we move forward. Otherwise, I mean, then that's, you know, that issue, whatever the fix is not gonna be done this year, it'll be done on construction time, so there's a little bit of time to kind of sort that out. Ripplebrook East, we just got another version of the developer's agreement. Came through from Mike today to Mary and I, so we'll have to sit down and take a look. I looked through the comments in the email. I mean, I think one of the sticking points is my recommendation, and according to the ordinance, to bond for the installation of stormwater pond. And we've gotten from no, I'm not doing anything with the stormwater to, okay, I'll do restoration of the stormwater, and now it's like, I'll do everything but the grading of the pond in this last, you know. So, I mean, that's still not acceptable in my mind, so I already know that comment. I mean, I'll take a look at what he has, how it's worded, but I feel very strongly, and I know you guys have the experience of this, that if there's two things that don't get done, it's the final lift and the stormwater. That's, you know.
And if they're not bonded for, they won't get done.
Yes, and if they're not bonded for, they don't get done.
So you're only looking to get bonded on a certain portion of the stormwater pond?
Yeah,
Is
the
that-
outlet structure, and then the matting, the erosion control.
Is that typical to piecemeal it like that,
No.
or, okay, that's, I'm like, wait a minute, it doesn't sound right or appropriate.
No, he doesn't want to bond for the grade, the excavation, which is,
Wouldn't that be the first thing that you would have to do? You can't do final grading or
Yeah.
anything else without excavating. I don't-
I guess if you look at it that way, I see his point.
True,
It's
because if you're getting to the other
It's gonna
stage.
get done, I mean, what do I gotta secure that part for?
well, no, because if we don't have it bonded and he doesn't excavate, we can't draw on
Money
the,
to do the grading and
Yeah.
excavation, yeah. Yeah, I mean, realistically, this is similar to like the I think it was the Lake Park storage condos where just bond the dang thing, and if you wanna, after you
And you can draw down
excavate it,
after-
draw it down.
Well,
Show
that's what
proof
I
that
don't
it's done, you
understand
get
is-
your money back.
okay, so maybe your funds are limited, but so then can we do like 2 bonds? Can we do a phased bond? Because you
Yeah.
have to do that first anyway.
Yeah,
I think it's just I can't recommend anything else to the village board, and he feels really strongly about his position not having to have to bond for that, but I can't recommend anything else. So I don't know how we're gonna
But have we set a precedence previously? Have we? not
Since I started, we've,
been bonding the whole thing,
Right.
yeah,
so that,
That's-
I don't understand why he's looking for forgiveness for that.
I thought Mike gave us a pretty clear legal opinion too, based on the
Yes.
statute.
Hold your ground,
Right.
that's all I gotta say.
Is what Mike said, basically.
yeah, like we have. So,
Weird.
we will take it on again, look at it and see.
Is the basic language the same in the new version? I mean, is he changing any of the legalese of the language, or is it still kind of the basic, his boilerplate, but the boilerplate that he's presented before?
He has used ours now, which is good.
Oh.
So most of the legal language has stayed the same. He's provided, now he has provided like crossed out versions, so that's nice, makes it a lot easier to review. But he will, he will change things like, I said installation, stormwater facilities, he said restoration of stormwater facilities. I was like, no. That means you're not bonding the outlet structure, you're not bonding grading.
Yeah.
So,
Curious.
and I think we each, I think Mary's got some comments about lighting and Mike has some other things that he wants to see that we're not quite getting it.
Yeah. Inching closer, but it only takes one sticking issue to be miles apart, so.
Right. So, that is Ripple Brook East. I don't know if I have any, I don't think I have any other updates. You guys have any questions for me?
Thanks. No correspondence? Outstanding. Mike's not here, who would like to have the honors tonight?
You guy. Everybody gets the honors.
Alright, move for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned, 9:05.
It makes you official.
There you go.
Yeah, well,
Sorry,
it's
I'm late.
kind of a fun one, I
Oh,
enjoyed the
Yeah,
discussions
why
tonight.
didn't lie to me more?
You bet, bunker, everything.
No name calling, we know.
We'll do.
We're still good.
Bar was set, so,
I'm sure I missed a good meeting.
good is a relative term. We'll just leave it at that. But you do have the privilege to watch it in full glory.
Yeah, you
so
were
too.
right, I could go back.
If you've got nothing better to do.
Guess
Nice
I'm
meeting you.
not gonna do.